I never thought I'd end up a farmer at 35, but when that certified letter arrived, stating the HOA owned the mineral rights to my grandfather's land, I knew something was off. Digging deeper, I found out their president had forged documents while Grandpa was hospitalized. How could I take on a powerful HOA bent on snatching my family's farm right from under me? Drop a comment below with where you're reading from. The certified letter trembled in my hands, my coffee cooling untouched beside me. This has to be a mistake, I muttered to the silent kitchen. I reread it. According to the Pinewood Estates Homeowners Association, they held all mineral rights to my grandfather's farm, my farm now, and intended to start excavating in just 4 weeks. Grandpa's funeral was barely 2 months past. After he died, I ditched my tiny city apartment and soul-draining bookkeeping job to take over his 15-acre spread in Cedar Hollow. This land had been ours for 3 generations. Every summer of my childhood was spent here, tending the apple orchard, collecting eggs, learning how the earth shifts with the seasons. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number on the letterhead. After 3 transfers, a sharp voice answered. Eleanor Grayson speaking. HOA President. MS. Grayson, I'm calling about this letter claiming you own mineral rights to my property. There's got to be some mix-up. No mix-up, Mr. Carter, she replied coolly. Your grandfather signed the agreement 2 years ago. Our survey found valuable limestone deposits under your eastern field. Digging starts next month. It's all legal. My grandfather would never. Maybe you didn't know him as well as you think, she cut in, hanging up. I sat there, stunned, as sunlight poured over the fields Grandpa had worked his whole life. He'd taught me how to read the soil, when to plant, which trees needed extra love. He'd have cut off his own arm before signing away this land. That afternoon, I drove to where my property met Pinewood Estates, a 5-year-old development of cookie-cutter houses with manicured lawns. A woman gardening near the fence straightened as I approached. You must be Henry's grandson, she said, peeling off her gloves. I'm Clara Evans. So sorry about your grandfather. He was a gem. Did you know him well? I asked. Well enough. He brought me apples every summer. Her eyes flicked to her house before she whispered, watch out for that HOA. Eleanor's had her sights on your land since they built this place. What do you mean? Clara glanced around. She's always pushing to expand. Your grandfather wouldn't sell, even when they offered way over market value. A car door slammed nearby, and she hurriedly added, gotta get back to my flowers. HOA only allows certain plants. Got fined last month for unapproved daisies. She laughed nervously. That night, sleepless, I rummaged through Grandpa's old filing cabinet. Tax forms, equipment receipts, nothing about mineral rights. At 2 a.m., I found a folder labeled Property Docs with a 1963 deed when he bought the place. It clearly stated all mineral rights stayed with the land, no exceptions. The next morning, I hit the county records office. A clerk named George, glasses perched on his nose, pulled up the files. Here's the original deed, he said, matching what I'd found. Tax history, permits, boundary changes from the 87 county road. Nothing about mineral rights transfers. Can you check anyway? I asked. He frowned at his screen. Huh. There's a transfer filed 2 years ago, signed by Henry Carter, giving subsurface rights to Pinewood Estates Development Corporation. My gut sank. He printed it, a legal-looking form with Grandpa's supposed signature, dated April 15th, 2022. But it looked off. Got anything else he signed for comparison? George dug up a tax appeal from 5 years back. Side by side, the signatures didn't match. Grandpa's quirky H was absent from the transfer. Driving home, my Aunt Lillian called. You asked about Grandpa signing away mineral rights? Never mentioned it. And listen, April 15th, 2022, when that document was dated. He was in the hospital after a stroke from April 2nd to 27th. I was there daily. He couldn't grip a pen for weeks. My hands clenched the wheel. Forged. It had to be. What now, she asked. Whatever it takes, I said, eyeing the farmhouse glowing in the sunset. This stays ours. Later, I spotted a drone over my eastern field, where they claimed limestone lay. It zipped back toward Pinewood Estates as I approached. They were watching. 2 men in hard hats were staking my field when I skidded to a stop. What are you doing on my land? I demanded. HOA hired us to mark excavation zones, one said. waving a clipboard. Permits are in order. I never agreed to this. Talk to the HOA, pal. Then you won't mind me calling Sheriff Thompson. They exchanged glances, grabbed their gear, and left. My neighbor, old Mr. Daniels, limped over. Good riddance. Those Pinewood folks think they own everything. Did Grandpa ever mention selling mineral rights? Henry? Never. Eleanor's been after your land since day one, offered him a fortune. He'd rather eat dirt. No lawyer in the county would touch my case. Conflicts of interest, they said. Online, I studied property law until dawn. I needed proof of forgery, the forger's identity, and leverage against the HOA's deep pockets. Back at the clerk's office, I requested every document tied to my land in Pinewood. George whispered. The transfer wasn't notarized by our usual folks. It's Judith Grayson, Eleanor's sister-in-law. Rumors say they've pulled shady stunts before. At the hospital, records confirmed Grandpa's stay and hand weakness through mid-May 2022. Then a call. Mr. Carter, I'm Lisa Morgan from 112 Pinewood Drive. Saw you with Clara. Some of us homeowners are meeting tonight about the HOA. Join us. At a coffee shop in the next town, 7 people waited. Lisa, sharp and determined, said, We're fed up with Eleanor, but what she's doing to you is too far. How'd you know? She bragged at the last meeting about grabbing your mineral rights, said Paul Bennett, a retired lawyer. She's hitting us with a $1,200 assessment for it. Most don't even know why. I laid out my evidence. Grandpa couldn't have signed this. It's fraud. Paul nodded. Criminal. But Eleanor's husband golfs with the sheriff. We need airtight proof. What about going public? Lisa suggested. Expose it, my blog's got readers. As we left, she pointed to a sedan. That's Eleanor. She'd followed me. She knows we're organizing. Paul said. We've got to move fast. A knock startled me at 9 p.m. It was Lisa. I live by your Eastfield. The HOA's a nightmare. Over tea, she shared her story, fined $500 for wildflowers despite them being approved. Eleanor laughed when I protested, threatened to lean. 2 nights later, my kitchen hosted 7 Pinewood residents with their own gripes. Fines, fake landscaping fees, a $15,000 playground upgrade. That was just paint. Paul studied my docs. Textbook fraud. But her brother-in-law's on the county commission. They've dodged worse. We planned. Paul on legal, others on HOA finances, Lisa rallying support. Why my land, though? I asked. Not limestone, Paul said. Something bigger. At midnight, headlights flashed. A car with binoculars sped off. They're watching, Lisa whispered. By sunrise, Lisa texted. Emergency HOA meeting tonight. Security measures. Be ready. Then, at my gate, a chain and padlock barred me, an orange sign reading, restricted, mineral excavation prep. 2 guards blocked me. HOA orders. Sheriff Thompson arrived, reviewed their papers, and sighed. They filed yesterday. It's legal for now, get a lawyer. I watched strangers roam my land all day. Texts poured in. Eleanor's pushing a $2,000 assessment, lying about Grandpa signing willingly. At dusk, Dr. Emily Parker, my geologist friend, arrived. We snuck soil samples at dawn. Nothing special, just farmland. Then Paul called. The real prize? A highway exit through your field, boosting their property values millions. Not minerals, money. We went public. News, social media, everything. I chained my tractor, drove it to the gate as cameras rolled, and shouted, This is about a highway exit, not limestone. Dr. Parker debunked their survey. Paul revealed $200,000 missing from HOA funds. Eleanor stormed in, but Sheriff Thompson arrested her for fraud and forgery. That night, allies guarded my farm against a bulldozer her nephew abandoned. In court, evidence crushed her, forged signatures, hospital records. She and her husband faced charges, sold their home, and left. 6 months later, we built a community market on my land, linking Cedar Hollow and Pinewood. The highway came, but preserved us, proving community outvalued greed. Grandpa was right. The land's worth wasn't beneath it, but in the connections it grew.